Hello and welcome to Nook News. I'm Beth Hadfield, your host and the activity coordinator at the Center for Active Living, the Plymouth Council on Aging. Today I am joined by Kourtz of Protective Services and Rosemarie Kennedy, Protective Services Supervisor. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining me.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Today we are going to talk about the topic of elder abuse. When you think of it, you think, oh, does this really happen in my community? But the statistics show it happens in a lot of places. Can you elaborate for me?
Sure. Elder abuse is underreported, and it's a hidden problem, and it's happening in a lot of communities. For us at Old Colony Elder Services, we receive the reports for protective services, and Plymouth is one of our highest numbers in terms of getting reports for elder abuse. We receive over 100 reports each month for protective services.
So what does that mean that you get reports for protective services?
So anybody can file a report. People will call into Old Colony Protective Services when they have a concern about an elder that might be suffering from some form of abuse, neglect, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial exploitation, and self-neglect. So they may have a concern about a family member, a friend, an acquaintance. We get reports from mandated reporters, such as social workers, nurses, doctors, EMS. Anybody that's involved with an elder, anybody can file a report if they're concerned. So they call us and they file an intake regarding the concern of the elder, and then that intake is processed through the Protective Service Department.
Okay. Are elders more or less vulnerable than any of the other populations today?
I think they're more vulnerable. Elders can be vulnerable because they have some type of loss of independence, or they may be more socially isolated. That makes them at higher risk for elder abuse.
What are some signs of abuse?
So depending on the type of neglect, there's many signs, but some outward signs would be lack of personal care, basic hygiene. The home environment may be dirty, cluttered, and financially a sign would be of someone who may have someone managing their money for them, yet none of their bills are paid. Asking to borrow money when they always had money before. And one thing that we are seeing is a lot more financial exploitation, particularly in the Plymouth area because of the opioid crisis, where there's a lot of grandchildren or children of elders who are, in crisis with opioids and pressuring vulnerable elders to lend them money, to give them money. So that's, we're seeing an uptake in intakes regarding those kind of intakes.
So how do we get people to start to A, notice what's happening, and B, change the cycle? I mean, I think a lot is involved with both of those.
Right.
So where do you think we should begin?
I think it all starts with recognizing what the signs and symptoms of elder abuse are and asking some questions and being the eyes and ears, check on neighbors and know what's going on with elders in your own family in terms of situations that may arise that they could be suspecting of elder abuse. Sometimes things don't seem right, which means that they're not right, and that it requires a little bit of exploration in terms of what the situation may be.
And in terms of in your own community, in your own neighborhood, if you see a neighbor that maybe you're not even very familiar with, but you see them showing signs of confusion, you see a change in behaviors, you see not taking care of their hygiene, and they don't really have a lot of support out there, it may mean they are showing signs of dementia and need help. So elder abuse isn't only just outward physical abuse or exploitation. Right. We do a lot of self-neglect where elders in the community just don't have family support or have any informal supports. And we can come in and assist and help them either stay in the community if they're safe, and if they're not, to get them somewhere where they are safe.
If I were to make a report, is my name given? Like, do people need to be concerned that someone may retaliate back to the reporter?
No, the reporter's name is kept confidential. We can't confirm and deny whether a report is made. We keep that information confidential. The only person that information gets shared with is if the case is of serious abuse or neglect and it goes to the district attorney's office. They're the only person that would get that information.
Okay. So, so how do we encourage people, since we know it's underreported, which you stated,
right?
How do we encourage people to take that first step? I think there are people out there that are truly afraid. They're fearful that it could be in their own family, but maybe it's their best friend's family or their neighbor. They don't want retaliation. What advice do you think we should start to tell them so that they think about maybe taking that first step?
Well,
it is a law that we cannot divulge who the source, comes from. And I mean, if they have questions or concerns, they can always call us anonymously if they need to at first, and to just run it by us. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I suspect. And we can, advise them on which route to take. If they don't initially give us any names, then we don't take a report. They can always call and ask questions.
Okay. There is, I'm assuming, a very specific way that we report abuse.
right.
Obviously, it definitely starts with a phone call, and we'll put the phone number up on the screen so people will know what that number is. What happens when you call in?
When you file a report, an intake worker is going to take all the information regarding the situation, and they're going to ask all kinds of questions regarding the current situation with the elder. They may ask you questions that you may not know, but we have to look at the situation and try and gather as much information as possible to determine the risk to the consumer as well as the risk to a worker going out to the home. We take safety very as a priority, so we want to make sure that the elder is safe when we make that visit as well as the worker. Okay. So they're going to ask background information, what the situation is, what's going on, what's making you call today, and just ask, what the elder's housing situation is, who lives there, what is the elder's medical conditions, those kind of things when you file a report.
Do you go in announced or unannounced?
Right now, the majority of our visits are unannounced. Unless there is a heightened risk for domestic violence, and we don't want to place the elder at further risk, but the majority of our visits are unannounced. And we'll see the elder at home. We may see the elder, in the hospital or in a nursing home, sometimes out in the community at the Council on Aging, or even at our office.
And the reason we're doing the unannounced visits, if there's a question of the elder having dementia, we don't get an accurate portrayal of the situation over the phone, whereas also when we're going out and seeing the elder face to face, they're more likely to accept our help. They're going to be very suspicious if they're just receiving a phone call with no ID to prove who we are.
Right.
So that's why unannounced. But having said that, if there's a compelling reason that we need to make ourselves known before we go, then we can do that as well.
Do you find that when you're checking into these cases that people are more forthcoming or more hesitant?
What do you think, Rose?
People are more forthcoming than you would imagine. Before I did this job, and as I'm doing it, sometimes I think if someone knocked on my door and started asking me these questions, I'd tell them to go away. But some people are very much forthcoming, and there are your habitual self-neglectors who just don't want help and don't want to engage. But honestly, I'm not sure what the refusal rate is, although we're not really accepting refusals.
Right.
It's a different procedure than we used to have. But more often than you think, people are willing to engage, willing to accept
I think it's in the
some
approach.
sort of help.
It's in the approach, and I think that we try and get the message out there that we're here to help. It's not a punitive program.
Right.
We want to keep people in the home as long as possible, and we're trying to do what we can to help alleviate whatever situation that they have going on.
Do you go in as a team, or do you go in individually, maybe initially, and then?
It depends on the situation. I mean, we do make joint visits when it's warranted.
For safety reasons. If there's any
Absolutely.
question of a worker's safety, you would take another person. And sometimes the person who's being accused of being the abuser may be in the home, so
Mhm.
you want one person to kind of distract while you do
Right.
the interview. So.
Right.
You talk about self-neglect.
Mhm.
What exactly is self-neglect?
Self-neglect, unfortunately, is 50% of our cases now.
Mhm.
And it can be an elder that is just not meeting their day-to-day needs. So it could be an elder that's medically non-compliant, or that may have hoarding issues, or they have diabetes and they're not following their medications, or having trouble taking their medications. They may just be resistant to services. They may be at risk because, like Rose mentioned, they have dementia or Alzheimer's, and there may be a wander risk. So it runs the gamut in terms of them just not being able to meet their day-to-day needs.
We also take under self-neglect people suffering from mental health issues who may
Mhm.
not be getting treatment, or substance
Right.
abuse issues who may not be getting treatment, not managing their finances appropriately.
Right.
There's a whole
Yeah.
array of things
So
that
do
could fall.
you offer services to help in those situations? Like
Yes.
in a self-neglect situation where maybe they've stopped paying their bills because now somebody is taking their money
Mhm.
and they're only paying bare minimums.
Right.
Can you go in and help with those situations?
Part of protective services is looking into the situation and doing an assessment of what's going on. And then the second part is what services can help alleviate that situation. So
Okay.
it could be assisting with referrals for, like you mentioned, if there's either financial exploitation or if somebody's not managing their money appropriately. It could be making referrals to money management, or seeing if they need assistance with legal assistance.
Okay.
If it's something that's going on like emotional abuse or physical abuse, do they need assistance with counseling referrals, or having support groups suggested for caregiver support if the caregiver is having a hard time and needs more support and education. So it could be any number of those things in terms of services, or it could be court involvement where we help an elder get a restraining order against somebody. So it depends on the situation in terms of the allegation, what services we're going to recommend to plug in.
How does it work after that? So the initial report is completed and then you
Mhm.
go in and make some findings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go back again?
Yes.
So we stay involved as long as we can to alleviate what the initial concern is. I mean, as Terry said, it can involve going into court, getting a guardianship, a conservator to help with money or to help with making decisions. Those are in extreme cases. In less extreme cases, it may just be getting services in, getting counseling. There's so many different
care,
things
yeah.
that fall under the umbrella for protective services,
Right.
that there's so many different interventions that could happen. But the rule is that we stay involved as long as the elder will allow us to,
Right.
and B, till that situation is
Yes.
alleviated.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about this. What constitutes an elder?
Mm-hmm.
And are there hardcore statistics as to how many are abused in a day, in a month, in a week, or what have you?
For us, it goes by our regulations, and our regulations say an elder is somebody who's 60 or older,
Okay.
which sometimes people don't like being called elders when they're in their 60s,
Definitely not.
which I understand, but by our regulations, it's 60 or over. They have to reside primarily in the community, and they have to have a personal relationship with the person for protective services to be involved. For elders, in terms of numbers, our reports continue to go up. As the population ages, we continue to get more reports each year. I don't know how many reports we've gotten, this past year, but I want to say it was something like 25,000 reports across the state of Massachusetts. So it's on the rise.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, we're actually going to be participating in a walk to raise awareness.
Yeah.
We're going to end elder abuse, or hope to make people as aware of it as possible, so that we want people to come out and join us.
Yes.
So when is our walk in Plymouth?
We're going to do the March for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Plymouth on June 22nd. It's going to be down by the waterfront. But first we're going to meet at the Council on Aging, which is the what's the new name of the council on
Center
aging?
for Active
I'm
Living.
still getting used to that, the Center for Active Living. We're going to meet there first, and then we're going to get transported down to the waterfront, where we're going to do a quick march, and then we're going to go back to have lunch and speakers and pizza, and it's free. So please come join us.
We'd love to have you.
If anybody participated last year, which we had, and we had picket signs, you know that we had a story from one of our seniors who, after it was all over, came to us and said, "Can I have a shirt?" And we were like, "Absolutely." And she said, "I know someone who had divulged some information to her." So maybe we didn't help 50 people, but we know that we brought awareness to one. What can we continue to do? Obviously, even if we're doing this one person at a time, and we're looking for those signs, is there something else that we should be doing?
I think checking in with people is the key. You know, having your eyes and ears open to hear, you know, what's going on with somebody, and knowing, you know, how they are. That's the first, you know, first steps. And then, just like I said, recognizing the signs and symptoms, and people knowing that, so that if they encounter it, they know, oh, wait a second, that might sound like, you know, so-and-so that I know, and let's check in with them and see how they're doing, and determine, does it rise to the level that Protective Services needs to get involved, because we are here to try and help.
Old Colony Elder Services does more than just
Yes.
protective services, and we know that, but maybe we can talk a little bit about what else they can do, or how else they can help, because that's what they're designed for.
Old Colony Elder Services has a lot of other services available, and Protective Services relies heavily on those services to try and help alleviate these abusive situations. Whether it's home care services to plug in services in the home in terms of homemaking or adult day health, whether it's home delivered meals to assist. We're trying to do anything we can to try and alleviate that abuse, to alleviate the stress that might be going on in the home.
Do your services through Old Colony Elder Services, is there a fee behind?
For home care, there is a co-payment, but that's based on income. The home delivered meals, it's a voluntary donation, I believe. So it's a minimal amount for services for home care, unless they are on an extended program. And if they're on an extended program, then that's a Mass Health covered program.
So in your title, it's also MMP. What does MMP stand for?
Money Management Program.
And what does that, what can that do to help seniors?
Money management helps train volunteers and links those volunteers with the consumer. And then they establish a relationship where that volunteer will go to the consumer's home once or twice a month to help them with their bill paying. So this allows elders to remain independent in the home longer. We have some volunteers who have been volunteers with consumers for 6 or 7 years. They've established a relationship, and they continue to assist them. And anybody can volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers in certain areas that are hard for us to reach for our consumers. Some of them have banking background, some of them don't. Some of them just know how to balance a checkbook, and that's all you need to do.
Can I get help?
Exactly. They help with budgeting, and they help with, you know, bill paying and making sure people's rents are paid on time, so there's no threat of eviction. So they really are a value to Protective Services, as well as being able to have our consumers remain in the home.
You know, you've said this quite a few times, remaining in the home, and I know that many of our seniors watching, that's a huge issue for them. And people don't realize that we don't want,
No.
as a community, as service providers, to ever take someone out of the home. That's an absolute last resort.
Absolutely.
Yet they might need help, but they won't ask because they're afraid.
Yep.
Any ideas for?
Well, I mean, people do think that because we've had to put some people in nursing homes or rest homes, that's our first go-to. It is not. That's the last-ditch effort, and it's only when someone's safety is
High risk,
at risk that happens. our main priority is to keep people in the community. I mean, that's what our whole organization is based on, is doing the least restrictive, most appropriate, but keeping people in their home. All our services are geared to that. So that's what we strive for.
I mean, working at the Center for Active Living, we deliver over 115, 125 meals a day to people just in our very small, large Plymouth community, which reaches the far tips of West Plymouth, South Plymouth. I mean, I know how important it is. You know, there are times where we don't have enough drivers and we try and help out, and it's amazing to bring a smile to someone's face where you know they aren't seeing anybody.
Right, that may be their only contact during the day. Is that meal?
Yeah, those meal providers, those van drivers bring more than just a meal.
That's
like
right.
there's another set of eyes, ears to make sure that elder's safe, and just a friendly face checking in with them, which is crucial, you know.
Right. Terry, we had talked about earlier, some of the regulations are changing, I believe, through protective services.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit about what's going to go on?
Sure. As of June 30th, the centralized intake is going to begin for Massachusetts, which means all reports are going to be taken 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through our elder abuse hotline. And the number, which I'm sure you can put on the screen, but I'll say it. It's 1-800-922-2275. That's the number where everybody is going to have to file their protective service report regardless of where the person lives. And then those reports will get sent to the local protective service agencies to screen and determine if they rise to the level of an investigation. So that's a change for our system, because each protective service agency would take their own protective service reports across, you know, Massachusetts. We have 22 protective service agencies. So it's all going to be done in centralized intake.
So they're not, you said there's only 22 across the state of Massachusetts, so there isn't one in every town.
Correct.
So does it go by the Elder Services group, like your Old Colony Elder Services? I believe Cape Cod has their own, so it will...
The majority of protective service departments are in with an ASAP or home care agency, but there are some that are not. You know, so for instance, Bristol Elder Services has, you know, a wider area than just Bristol. They took over some of Coastline's area, so it depends on the agency. But for the whole state of Massachusetts, all the reports will be filed through centralized intake.
And every report will be at least looked into?
Yes.
So will they be calling, or will they be visiting, or is it just a combination of everything?
It's that process isn't changing. The report will be filed and it will be sent to the protective service agency to determine, does it get screened in or screened out for an investigation. If a case gets screened out, we will look at that and determine, is there a referral that we can make on behalf of that person that maybe hasn't been tried for instance, self-neglect. But those cases, if they don't meet our jurisdiction, we, in the screening process, will try and figure out whose jurisdiction it may meet and get that report to the correct agency.
Okay. Do we, you know, I said this, I wonder, I'm thinking, well, how do we prevent it? And I love that it's keeping your eyes and ears and checking in. But our older seniors came from a society where don't ask, don't tell, and you don't talk about somebody else's business.
Right.
So do we think they'll step up?
Well, we hope so, because we hope that if somebody's in that situation, that you would want somebody to step up for you. You know, and you're just trying to do the right thing in terms of getting them help. It's not like you're trying to get anybody in trouble. It's a process that we are trying to help, and that might be the only person that can help, you know.
And I think you'd be surprised how many people do step up. Before I did this job, I would have never imagined the amount of intakes that you would get A, and B, the openness of so many people that we meet in the community that really want help. They've struggled for a long time and they really want the help. And,
You know,
and if you're questioning something, you don't know if it's protective services,
Right, call.
can't hurt to ask. That's all, you know. Just watch out for your neighbors, watch out for your friends, watch out for your neighbors' friends.
And your family
It's
members.
true.
And if
yeah.
you see something, if you see someone that you're worried about, it can't hurt anything to just call and ask a question. And
so we're going to be wrapping this up. June 22nd, we will be down at the waterfront to march and bring awareness to elder abuse. Please come join us. Carry a sign, carry a torch, wear a shirt. We make differences, even one shirt at a time. I hope that you'll join me again. We will be doing our show on a monthly basis, and I hope that maybe in a year or so I can bring you ladies back and we can tell them that we really did make a difference, and things will begin to change. Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you down at the waterfront.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.